Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, and today I want to tell you about something that really changed the way I see language learning. But first, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had this experience? You know the words, you know the grammar, but when it's time to speak, your mind goes blank. Or maybe you do say something, but it sounds strange, slow, or unnatural. And then you think, oh no, why did I even try? Well, what if I told you that there are only two steps, just two, between you and speaking English with genuine confidence? Not fake confidence, not pretend confidence, but real, authentic confidence that makes native speakers actually want to continue conversations with you. And here's the kicker. These two steps have nothing to do with memorizing more vocabulary or mastering complex grammar rules. In fact, one of these steps is something you probably do naturally in Portuguese, but completely abandon when you switch to English. Oh, and before we dive, I have to share this message that I received yesterday from Maria, a listener of Sao Paulo. She wrote, I took your advice from the last episode, and yesterday I had a 20-minute conversation with my American colleague about weekend plans. For the first time, I wasn't translating in my head. That's exactly what we're talking about today, Mary. You stumbled on step number 1 without even realizing it. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's unpack these two game-changing steps that separate the hesitant English speakers from the confident ones. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you will understand why some people seem to get the English conversation so quickly, while others struggle for years with the same basic interactions. Let's get started. Now, before we jump into our two steps, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're at a party, a festa, right? You're chatting with your Brazilian friends, telling stories, making jokes, interrupting each other, laughing. You're completely natural. Your Portuguese flows like water. You use expressions, you pause for effect, you even make up words sometimes, and everyone understands you perfectly. But then, plot twist, an English speaker joins your group. Suddenly, your entire demeanor changes. Your shoulders tense up, your voice becomes monotone, and you start speaking like you're reading from a textbook. Hello, how are you? I am fine, thank you. And you? Sound familiar? This transformation happens because most English learners make one critical mistake. They treat English like a completely separate entity from their natural communication style. It's like they believe that to speak English, they need to become a different person. And that brings us to our first step. Step 1, bring your personality into English. This might sound obvious, but hear me out. Your personality, your jeito de ser, as we say in Portuguese, is your secret weapon in English conversation. Yet most learners leave it at the door the moment they switch languages. Let me tell you about Carlos, a student of mine from Rio. Carlos is hilarious in Portuguese. He's the guy who makes everyone laugh at churrasco gatherings, who tells stories with perfect timing, who can make even boring topics entertaining. But when Carlos spoke English, he became, well, let's just say he wasn't winning any personality contests. One day, I gave him a simple challenge. Tell me about your weekend plans, in English, but pretend you're telling your best friend about them. The change was immediate. Instead of saying, I will go to the beach with my family, he said, oh man, I'm dragging my kids to the beach this weekend. They keep complaining about the sand, but I need my vitamin C, you know? Notice the difference? Same information, but suddenly Carlos was Carlos again, even in English. Here's what most English courses don't teach you. English speakers don't just communicate information, they communicate personality. When a native speaker asks, "How was your day?" they're not looking for a weather report. They want to connect with the person behind the words. Think about this in Portuguese. When someone asks, "E aí, como foi seu dia?" you don't just list activities. You might say, foi uma loucura, or que dia mais arrastado, or nem me fala, que sufoco. You're not just reporting facts. You're sharing an experience, a feeling, a perspective. The same principle applies in English, but we need to learn how to transfer that natural expressiveness. Instead of, my day was difficult, try, what a day! Everything that could go wrong basically did. Instead of, I am very tired, try, I'm absolutely wiped out, or I'm running on fumes here. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something that fascinates me about language learning. In Portuguese, we have this concept of jogo de cintura, that flexibility, that ability to adapt and flow with situations. We use it naturally when we speak Portuguese, but somehow we think English requires us to be rigid and formal. Let me share a cultural insight that might surprise you. Americans and British people actually value authenticity and personality in conversation more than perfect grammar. I've seen native speakers connect instantly with English learners who made grammar mistakes but showed genuine personality, while technically perfect speakers who sounded robotic were quickly forgotten. There's actually a term for this in communication psychology. It's called presence. When you bring your authentic self into English, you have presence. People want to keep talking to you because they're talking to a real person, not a walking grammar book. Now, you might be thinking, but I don't know enough words to express my personality in English. And that leads us beautifully into Step 2. Step 2. Master the art of creative communication. This is where English learning gets really fun, and it's something Brazilians are naturally good at. We just need to give ourselves permission to do it in English. What do I mean by creative communication? It's the ability to express your ideas even when you don't know the exact words. It's linguistic problem solving. It's what we do in Portuguese all the time without even thinking about it. For example, in Portuguese, if you forget the word sacarolhas, you might say, aquela coisa de abrir vinho, that thing for opening wine. You don't stop the conversation. You don't apologize profusely. You find another way to communicate your idea, and life goes on. But in English, Learners often freeze when they don't know a specific word. They'll stop mid-sentence, apologize, and sometimes completely abandon their thought. This kills conversational flow and, more importantly, kills confidence. Here's what confident English speakers do. They use what I call creative descriptions. Instead of knowing the word procrastinate, they might say, I keep putting off things I should do. Instead of nostalgic, they might say, it makes me think about the good old days. Instead of claustrophobic, they might say, I feel trapped in small spaces. Let me tell you about Anna, another student. Anna was trying to tell me about her weekend trip, but she got stuck on the word trilha, hiking trail. Instead of stopping, she said, you know, that path in the forest where people walk for exercise? Perfect! Everyone understood exactly what she meant. This is brilliant communication because it shows you're thinking in English, not translating from Portuguese. You're working with the words you have, not worrying about the words you don't have. But creative communication goes beyond just describing unknown words. It's about becoming comfortable with imperfection and embracing what I call English flow state. In Portuguese, when you're in conversation flow, you might use expressions like sabe como é, or sei lá, or tipo assim, these little connective phrases that give you time to think and keep the conversation moving. English has the same thing. You know what I mean, it's like, basically, actually. These aren't filler words. They're conversation lubricants. They make you sound natural and give you precious thinking time. Native speakers use them constantly, yet many English learners think they need to speak in perfectly structured sentences with no pauses or self-corrections. Here's a revelation that changed everything for one of my students. English speakers interrupt themselves all the time. They start sentences one way and finish them another way. They go off on tangents and come back to their original point. They use gestures and facial expressions to communicate meaning. This is normal. This is how real English sounds. Not like the dialogues in textbooks where person A asks a question and person B gives a complete, grammatically perfect response. Let me give you some practical techniques for creative communication. First, the it's like technique. When you don't know a specific word, use comparison. It's like a small computer you wear on your wrist for smartwatch. It's like when you feel happy and sad at the same time for bittersweet. Second, the you know when technique. You know when you're really tired but can't sleep? For insomnia. You know when you see someone you haven't seen in years? For unexpected encounters. Third, the opposite technique. If you don't know how to say something directly, say what it's not. It's not exactly sad, but it's not happy either. He's not mean, but he's definitely not friendly. And here's something beautiful about creative communication. It often leads to more interesting conversations than if you had just used the correct word. When Anna described the hiking trail as the path in the forest where people walk for exercise, It opened up a whole conversation about different types of exercise and outdoor activities. Now, let's talk about something that might surprise you. There's actually a third element that supports both of these steps, and it's something most English courses completely ignore: cultural communication patterns. This is normal. This is how real English sounds, not like the dialogues in textbooks where person A asks a question and person B gives a complete, grammatically perfect response. Americans and British people have different conversation styles than Brazilians, and understanding this can supercharge your confidence. For instance, in Brazilian Portuguese, we often use indirect communication. We hint at things. We use context. We expect people to read between the lines. We might say, "Está pouco frio aqui," when we want someone to close the window. In English, especially American English, communication tends to be more direct. Instead of hinting, you might say, "Could you close the window? It's getting chilly in here." This isn't rude, it's just a different cultural style. Understanding this difference helped Roberto, a student from Belo Horizonte, tremendously. He was always confused when his American colleagues seemed to miss his subtle hints. Once he started being more direct in English, his workplace relationships improved dramatically. But here's the interesting part. You can still maintain your Brazilian warmth and friendliness while being more direct. You don't need to become cold or harsh. You just need to be clearer about what you want or think. This brings us to another crucial point. Confident English speakers make mistakes and don't care. They focus on communication, not perfection. They know that a conversation where you successfully share ideas, even with some grammar errors, is infinitely better than a conversation that never happens because you're too worried about making mistakes. If you're naturally funny in Portuguese, give yourself permission to be funny in English. Humor translates better than you think. The timing might be different. The cultural references might need adjustment, but your sense of humor is still your sense of humor. For step 2, creative communication, practice the explanation game. Take common Portuguese words that you might not know in English and practice describing them. How would you explain saudade to someone who's never heard the concept? How would you describe cafezinho or jeitinho brasileiro? This exercise does 2 things. It builds your creative communication skills, and it actually helps you become a cultural bridge, someone who can explain Brazilian concepts to English speakers, which is incredibly valuable in international conversations. But let's talk about something that many English learners struggle with: the fear of sounding childish or unsophisticated when they use simple words to express complex ideas. Here's the truth. Sophisticated communication isn't about using big words. It's about expressing your ideas clearly and engagingly. Some of the most respected public speakers in English use remarkably simple vocabulary. They focus on clarity, not complexity. Think about it this way. Would you rather listen to someone who uses simple words to tell a fascinating story, or someone who uses complex vocabulary to tell a boring story? The answer is obvious. This connects to something important about confidence. Confident speakers know that their ideas matter more than their vocabulary. They trust that their thoughts, experiences, and perspectives have value regardless of which words they use to express them. Let me share one more story that illustrates this beautifully. Last month, I was at an international conference where Luciana, a Brazilian engineer, was presenting her research. Her English wasn't perfect. She made some grammar mistakes. She occasionally searched for words. She even said, "How do you say?" a few times. But her presentation was the most engaging one of the day. Why? Because she was genuinely excited about her work. She used analogies and comparisons to make complex concepts understandable. And she wasn't afraid to show her personality. She made jokes, she used gestures, she connected with her audience as human beings, not just as receptacles for technical information. After her presentation, people swarmed around her with questions and comments, not because her English was perfect, but because her communication was effective and authentic. This is what I mean by confident English. It's not about sounding like someone you're not. It's about being the best version of yourself, using English as your tool for expression.
And here's something that might surprise you about these two steps. They actually make learning English faster and more enjoyable. When you bring your personality into English, you're more motivated to practice because you're practicing being yourself. When you master creative communication, you become less dependent on perfect vocabulary and more focused on actual communication. Think about children learning their first language. They don't wait until they have perfect grammar and complete vocabulary before they start communicating. They jump in, they make mistakes, they get creative with the words they have, and they express their personalities from day one. We can learn from this approach, not by being childish, but by being fearless and creative like children are. As we wrap up the main content of today's episode, I want you to think about this. What's one aspect of your personality in Portuguese that you've been hiding when you speak English? What's one way you naturally express yourself in Portuguese that you could adapt for English? Maybe you're the person who always has an interesting story to share. Maybe you're the one who asks thoughtful questions. Maybe you're naturally encouraging and supportive. Whatever it is, that quality doesn't disappear when you switch to English. You just need to give it permission to emerge. And remember, creative communication isn't about finding perfect translations. It's about finding ways to share your thoughts, feelings, and ideas using whatever English tools you have available. It's about being resourceful, not perfect.
So, there you have it. The 2 steps to confident English, bringing your authentic personality into the language and mastering creative communication. But you know what? I've been holding something back from you. During my research for this episode, I discovered something fascinating about successful English learners that challenges everything most people believe about language acquisition. It's a third element that, when combined with these 2 steps, creates what I can only describe as English breakthrough moments. Those magical instances when everything suddenly clicks, and you realize you're not just learning English anymore, you're living in English. I've been debating whether to share this discovery because it goes against conventional wisdom about language learning. In fact, it's so counterintuitive that when I first heard about it from a linguistics professor at Harvard, I thought she was completely wrong. But then I tested it with my students, and the results were, well, let me just say that what happened with Paulo from Recife completely changed how I think about English confidence. Paulo went from avoiding English conversations to actually seeking them out, all because of this one shift in approach that nobody talks about. So, there you have it. The 2 steps to confident English, bringing your authentic personality into the language and mastering creative communication. But you know what? I've been holding something back from you. During my research for this episode, I discovered something fascinating about successful English learners that challenges everything most people believe about language acquisition. It's a third element that, when combined with these 2 steps, creates what I can only describe as English breakthrough moments. Those magical instances when everything suddenly clicks, and you realize you're not just learning English anymore, you're living in English. I've been debating whether to share this discovery because it goes against conventional wisdom about language learning. In fact, it's so counterintuitive that when I first heard about it from a linguistics professor at Harvard, I thought she was completely wrong. But then I tested it with my students, and the results were, well, let me just say that what happened with Paulo from Recife completely changed how I think about English confidence. Paulo went from avoiding English conversations to actually seeking them out, all because of this one shift in approach that nobody talks about. I'm planning to reveal this third element in our next episode, along with Paulo's complete transformation story and a step-by-step guide for implementing all 3 components together. But I have to warn you, once you understand this missing piece, you won't be able to go back to your old way of thinking about English learning. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. What if the biggest obstacle to your English confidence isn't what you think it is? What if it's actually something so simple, so obvious, that you've been overlooking it this entire time? Send me a message and tell me what you think that obstacle might be. I'll be sharing some of your responses in the next episode, right before I reveal what might be the most important English learning insight I've ever discovered. Until next time, remember, you're not learning English to become someone else. You're learning English to become a fuller version of yourself. This was our episode today, made with lots of love. If you liked it, don't forget to like it and leave a comment. I would love to hear what you think. Oh, if you can, share this video with that friend of yours who loves to learn. Keep practicing, keep being authentic. Thank you so much for listening, and see you in the next episode. Kisses.